So let's go on with bar 3 and 4. I have a drop, extended drop, arranging and further traveling ahead. And high for a drop, a recharge, charging, 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 further drop and recharge. And if you stop for a while, you realize that we are reducing the number of times that I perform the recharging of my upper arm. That is clearly the action where we have to produce energy ourselves, fighting against the gravity. And so we realize that working on this piece, but actually working in general when playing piano, means to do muscular work to lift rather than to push the keys, because when we push we have a strong partner, gravity, that we can exploit to a more or less extent depending on the particular context. But certainly our muscles need to work in lifting, and so the more the lifting actions, the more strenuous the game become. And a good strategy, in my opinion, is to see where it is conveniently possible to reduce the number of reloads of lift of our mechanism. Let's go ahead. I want to pause here for a while. So we have the left hand that suddenly changed the pattern, the pattern with this chord here. And one thing I would like to say, because for me it looks like a possible misunderstanding, we have 3 accents there in between the top staff and the lower staff. I think those accents are clearly referred to the right hand that needs to let hear well this sort of cadenza. Are not really referred to the left hand as it might seem. That is not, I think, drawing a particularly interesting line. Now you see that Chopin, I think, puts the pedal mark clearly for practical reasons, because he wants a legato that is virtually impossible for, I think, 99% of human beings' hands in the first 2 chords. And the important thing for our study is to realize that the action between right hand and left hand in this specific point has to be synchronized with respect to the last note in the chord and the right hand strike. So I start the arpeggio slightly before the strike of the right hand to close together with the top note of the chord and the right hand note. In other terms, my mind, I think, had better shift the focus in this point for the left hand to the aim of the chord that are the top note. So I see the chord rather like notes here. And the right hand is playing quarter a normal alternating action as we now know it. So drop, recharge, recharge. I also want to spend a couple of minutes regarding what the fingers are doing. So the fingers basically are grasping in the left hand, so the upper arm is giving the power, and the finger with the grasping capability channel it on the right note, so the pinky is working quite a bit, but not really to produce the energy, but to allow the energy to be delivered on the key. And similarly for the chords, the other fingers need to be prehensile in the proper way for those keys. So practicing means to do some training like so first perhaps concentrating on the grasping action and then coordinating it with the drop action of the forearm. And similarly, the right hand, the fingers are not at all passive, but their activity is not again to produce the energy for the sound, for the key strike, but is instead to provide the proper peripheral extension that allows to channel the energy produced upstream to the key. And the finger have in the right hand an easy game instead in taking the second semiquavers, because typically the end is open, so it's very efficient for the finger to be in a way powerful enough with this movement that is very ergonomic and take that second semiquaver that, as I said, I don't think has a melodical function but a rhythmical feeling. Let's keep going with the screening. I'll try to play sufficiently slow to make evident what is happening with my arm in each step. And of course, one pitfall is that when we play slow, we allow our body to do things that couldn't be possible when we play faster. Like I did now mistakenly. I was not careful enough to stick with my handwritten nose, and I did an extra stroke in my arm at a certain point that put it in a position that was not proper for the next type of action. And what I mean to say with this, that we don't have to exaggerate in the slow tempo practice. We have to be brave enough to quickly build up speed, because this also will tell us if what we are doing is proper for the right tempo or not. Notice that here we are at that point where suddenly Chopin writes pedal marks here and there. And I think we can start right now to kind of memorize, if we are interested to use that idea, to memorize that with our body to then express that in performance. You notice that we arrived here with a crescendo and now we have a diminuendo, so let's not ignore that. Since the very beginning, I would say, of our building up of our performance. make a pause to highlight here. You see that I can conveniently say I drop on the G flat without doing nothing with my arm. With a slight rotation, I'm ready to drop it. So I'm doing 2 drops in a row. Let's go ahead here. We are in one of the, I think, mostly unforgiving passages. So here my playing by charging starts looking like a throwing of my entire arm. And here, in this point, particularly difficult, well, I found that a little trick is introducing a slight facilitation. That is, we start playing in an area where we don't have any dampers, right? So this means that if I take this B, for instance, there are no dampers. Provided that my amount of energy is the same when I strike it, there is absolutely no difference if I do like this or like this. If you hear with care, you notice that it's more an illusion, the fact that by holding the note there is longer sound. Actually, it's exactly the same in striking like that and leaving the sound going, because there are no dampers in there. And this to me is kind of helping when I am at bar 22nd, rather than sticking mechanically with this slur in physical terms, in leaving the notes, the piano, the way it's built, to take care of the sound continuity, and instead gain some freedom in handling this complicated pattern right here. So what I mean to say is that I play bar 22 something like you see, I don't hold the C flat because this helps my pinky to get ready and relaxed for the next strike that will be on the E double flat. And similarly here, I am down, I need to recharge. Well, why not leaving that the sound is keep going? I think you got the point. Exaggerating my action, hoping that it will be clearer in the camera. Once again, so the right hand can kind of replicate the same choreography that was finding in the very first bars, and the left hand start bouncing with the octaves that, in a way, for me, simplify a bit the situation, because still I need to bounce with my upper arm to have sufficient energy, but now I can distribute the weight of my upper arm on two fingers that work more or less always at the same distance, right? Instead, before, in certain jumps, it's very difficult because all the energy coming from the upper arm bouncing needs to be taken by the poor little pinky. And, well, easier said than done, right? Let's spend a minute about jumps. I wish I could receive some nicely effective trick to study jumps. I don't know, one thing I heard, I remember in a video from a lesson of the super great pianist Cyprien Katsaris, who was commenting a particular step in a Chopin, I think, impromptu. He was suggesting, for a configuration where there was a sudden jumps in octaves, to practice like getting ready in the first step of the jump, so let's say in this point. Basically to perform the first half of the jump in plain terms, but very quickly going to the final landing point without playing that first. And after 3-4 times that you do that, instead leaving the energy strike the key. This might be an idea. Sorry, I messed it up.
We are reaching one of those others, as I call them, unforgiving sections. I noticed that holding the arm slightly above with respect to what I'm doing in the rest of the piece introduces a slight facilitation. I don't know, perhaps this is in favor of having then the hands freely hanging down and doing these oscillations. Most of the times it's better not to play at all the very last semiquavers in the right hand, so something like. And notice the left hand, if it facilitates a bit, is in a certain point playing a sequence of B chords that can be grouped together in a chord kind of, how to say, feeling underneath the tips of the finger what is going next. Before moving to the end of my presentation, I want to underline again one concept about the amplitude, about the extension of our action, of the gesture. While playing the piece for the video, I tried intentionally to exaggerate to some extent the action, in particular of the upper arm and perhaps of the forearm, with intention of showing it as clearly as possible in a vivid way on the video. This being said, when we study at slow tempo, clearly there is the possibility of a wider action of our playing parts. I believe that when we play slow, there is no point in restraining the width of our action, and instead the focus should be in playing within the comfort zone for that particular part of the playing mechanism, so that it avoids an overaction on one side and a restrained action on the other side, because both of these extreme ends generate their own problems that are harmful to the musical flow. Now, of course, when we progressively speed up our tempo, we don't have to pretend to maintain the width of our action as it was at slow tempo, because there is no time available for an easy traveling of that particular part of the body in that tiny amount of time, right?
so this allows to me to underline that I believe building up our speed in a particular piece is not comparable to the work of building up our muscles reps. Instead, a more appropriate comparison, if it could be of help, I believe would be with some kind of yoga practicing, in particular where the focus is on the tiny adjustments of our body, perhaps following breathing. And so, in particular, I remember a few years ago I was attending for a few months a yoga course. One particular day where the teacher was showing a very intricate physical position. And then what I remember about her explanation is in order to achieve that intricate position, the point is not to apply a forced stretch of the possibilities of the body parts. Instead, that was to be achieved through a conscious, focused, gentle pairing of breathing with the physical adjustments. In particular, I believe at any exhale, the point was with the concentration to pair with the exhale an additional tiny stretch through the time. And so I believe this is something somehow similar to what I believe should be the process in moving from the slow speed practice to the final tempo. I believe it's not possible in the same way in the yoga to push ourselves simply with a gradual increase of speed without proper focus on the feelings in ourselves, in our body parts. Instead, with our concentration, we have to monitor the results in terms of sound, but also in terms of physical easiness or strain. And so the repetition of the piano student is not a copy and paste, it is instead an active process of exploring what I have to millimetrically adjust at each repetition and seeing in which direction it moves me, whether in increasing the ease, that is the good direction, or creating strain, constraints, that of course is not what we need to do. Another consideration on a different subject is about one of the substantial difficulties of this piece, that is the jumping of the left hand. So there is an idea that popped up in my mind just in the very last days of my study of the piece, and then I felt I want to move on with studying other music, so I didn't give myself time to try it out, explore as it would need. However, I will share it here, so you might want to explore that and see whether it is effective or not. So basically what I did until this point was to play this piece, to study this piece by taking all the single notes in the left hand with the, most often with the fifth finger. And I'm not very happy with the accuracy that at times I accomplish when I jump to the farthest notes in the bass. But then I realized that perhaps rather than sticking with the idea of using the fifth finger, a good option could be to switch to the third finger. In fact, you might realize that when we want to reach the faraway keys in the bass, or for the right hand on the higher area of the sound of the keyboard, well, we have one option is to open up our arm. That is typically what you do when you want to reach with the fifth finger. And this brings with itself two problems. One is that you lift the entire arm, so you have these, I don't know, 3 kilos, perhaps a little more, a little less, that are lifted, and the gravity that wants to pull them down, so your shoulder muscles necessarily need to engage with a certain effort to lift your arm. And notice also that opening your arm inevitably means to lift your hand with the piano that instead doesn't lift. And so with the torso you need to apply some adjustment to do what you want to do on the keyboard. Now, but the other option is instead to keep relaxed the upper arm in the position where he is and simply rotate around the arm itself, so something like this. So in this case there is only the forearm that travels from where it was when you are like this to where you want to go if you rotate it. So there is no difference in terms of the weight that your muscle needs to take. And also when you rotate the left hand to reach the base, you will notice that the wider the rotation, the more the tip of the third finger tends to align with the tip of the fifth finger, to align along the key direction. So when you want to play far, there is not really a big difference between the rotation you need to reach the key with the fifth finger compared to what you need to reach the same key with the third finger. So there are some good rational points to consider this option that might bring a benefit in terms of accuracy and ergonomics, maybe. Alright, so I hope that this demonstration will be of some use for your study. Perhaps a couple of words to conclude regarding the use of the una corda pedal. Well, I am showing in the music score at the link in the notes what is my personal choice. Of course, this is absolutely very subjective and probably depending, together with your own taste, that I believe has a right to exist, belongs also to what the particular instrument, the environment is producing. So you will see that I use the una corda, I remove it, and again use and remove it in different sections. If you're curious to see what I'm doing, just look at the score. I think with this really my presentation is reaching its end. As you have seen, it's rather on the practical side, and of course this is just a bunch of bricks in the more extended work that we need to go through to eventually be able to perform this music in the way that we would like to express it. I could suggest, if you are curious, to go to see a presentation available on YouTube by a Polish pianist. His name is Greg, I think Niemczuk. I apologize for the wrong pronunciation. However, I'm posting the link. I think that video is great in the sense that what I'm seeing here, you are finding a kind of in-depth zooming in what I believe is proper to do in terms of body action to go through the pattern of the music. In Greg's video, especially in the second half, you find very interesting and entertaining in the way he presented them considerations regarding the structure of the piece and the spirit of the piece, and I truly recommend you to go and check it out. For the rest, a general comment, this is a very difficult etude, and in pedagogic terms, I think the beauty is that it's kind of putting you in front in a very clear, florid way to the pros and cons of using your arm in piano technique, and to practice this concept of the alternating action that is something that, however, is underlying the piano technique, I would say, universally. And so also in etudes that have a apparently completely different pattern, but you realize that to some degree using of this technique is fundamental. I'll give you just one example. So take this alternating action is working in the right hand like Thanks for watching the video so far. I hope you enjoyed that and you found some use in listening to at least part of it, and I look forward to seeing you in my next presentation.